Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. My name is Steve Hernandez, and I am the Executive Director of the Legislature's Nonpartisan Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity. We are here today to conduct a virtual town hall meeting in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. So for the whole month, we have been celebrating the contributions and the history of Hispanic Americans, not only to the state, but to the nation during the month. Just by way of background, Hispanic Heritage Month is a period from the 15th of September to the 15th of October in the United States, which recognizes the contributions and influence of Hispanic Americans to the history, culture, and achievements of our country. This year's theme, Hispanic Americans, a history of service to our nation, invites us to reflect on Hispanic American service and contributions, not only to the nation, but to the state of Connecticut itself. Ever since Hispanic Heritage Week was first proclaimed by President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1968 via presidential proclamation, presidents ever since then have proclaimed the month in honor of our people. So without anything further, I'd love to welcome all of you. I have to say, personally, this is a special treat for me for a couple of reasons. One, I often see many of you in several of the meetings that we conduct throughout the state of Connecticut, all in service to the people of the state of Connecticut. And what's really powerful for me is that there are so few of us in these positions, and yet you manage to shine, you manage to do, you manage to lead with grace, elegance, and always with a connection to our people and to our culture. So I wanted to say that because that's the framing of today's conversation. It's a celebration not only of our culture, but also of each of you as leaders. I'd like to welcome, first of all, my honorary co-hosts, Hilda Nieves and Representative Ed Vargas. Hilda, you're a member of the commission and a leader in your own right. So welcome, Hilda, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, and I'm just delighted and just honored to have been invited to participate in this virtual session, and just really proud to just see how far we've come in many regards when it comes to minorities, and more specifically when it comes to Latinos. I know what the challenge was when I was coming up the ranks through the judicial department, and I know that there's work still to be done.
Thank you, Hilda. Representative Ed Vargas, welcome. You could just unmute. There you go.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here, to be with all these wonderful leaders in the Latino community, and to see that we've progressed so much. Many of you know that I've been around for a long time. So, you know, when we started back, you know, we didn't always have this much representation, and we're probably still far behind in terms of the percentage of people we should have in leadership positions. It's still gratifying to see that so many people have been able to move forward and to represent our community so ably. So congratulations to all the people here on this panel for all their efforts on behalf of our people.
Thank you, Representative Vargas. I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves. You know, if we had the benefit of being in a public space together where everyone could see us and we could all see each other, I would just go on and on about each of you. But because of the space and the way this works, you know, when you talk, your face comes forward and the public can see you and get to know you a little bit. So I'm going to sort of recognize you in the order in which I see you. And start there. Firstly, I see Nieves. Welcome, Lesbia. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what you feel about public service as a Latina and as a resident of Connecticut, here in Connecticut.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation and being part of such an honorary panel here this afternoon. I am through and through a public servant. I have been duly had it for many, many years. I'm a colonel with the Army National Guard, been in that branch of service for over 33 years now, and I'm also a state employee. I've been working for the state of Connecticut for over 25 years. Worked at the Department of Children and Families for about 23 years, and I call it my dream job, coming over to the Department of Veterans Affairs, being the director here, Residential Program and Services. So I work with veterans every single day, not only in the capacity of being able to serve my fellow brothers and sisters, but also bring all the experience of a public service, social services, and connecting them back to all the great opportunities that are here available to our veterans in the state of Connecticut. So I follow public service with much passion and commitment, to say the least, and being able to provide a lot of education when it comes to our Latinos of letting them know, hey, these are your entitlements, these are your benefits, and providing continued emphasis across the board for our community. So very, very proud of my public service, so with a lot of commitment and passion. Thank you. Glad to
Thank
be
you
here.
so much, Tanya. Thank you. Maggie Vargas Silver, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very honored to be among you. My name is Maggie. My nickname is Maggie. My name is Magdalena Vargas. And I am Puerto Rican. I've been here since I was 17 years old. I currently work at the University of Connecticut as a deputy chief. I actually oversee UConn Health, in the Farmington campus, Hartford, Waterbury, Stanford, and those are the locations that I oversee as the deputy chief. Helping the community, working with the students is like my passion. It's what I love to do. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Maggie. And Rob Rosala, welcome.
So good evening. Thanks for having me. So first and foremost, I want to thank all of you for having me. This is a great group of individuals who are well accomplished. And obviously, we didn't get here by ourselves. So people like you, the representative, the commission itself, certainly served a big role in helping us all get here and, achieve the goals that we had as minorities. A little bit about me. I actually was born in Puerto Rico, came here when I was 3 or 4 years old. I grew up in the Meriden community. I left to here when I was probably 21, 22 years old to serve the Wilmington Police Department. I rose through the ranks there at the police department. For the last 4 years, I was chief of police in Willimantic, and then the opportunity came forward, and I had the option to come back home in Meriden and serve this community. So I'm truly blessed. It's kind of a blessing to be back home and serving this community where it all started, where I looked up to other officers in this community, and that's what really drove me as a young man. So being back home to be able to mentor and work with a lot of individuals that helped me get where I'm at, it's certainly a blessing. But thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, sir. Luca Sanova, welcome.
Did you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Well, hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Lou Casanova. I'm currently the police chief at the City of Connecticut Capitol Police Department. I've been in the law enforcement. My law enforcement career started in 1992. I've been doing this for almost 28 years now. I started with the Department of Corrections. From there, I went to New Haven. I ascended through the ranks. And in New Haven, I achieved the assistant chief's position. I worked in every single division of the police department. And currently I'm at the Capitol Police Department. And, one thing I want to say today is that I'm proud. I'm proud. Leadership is lonely, and leadership as a Latino is even lonelier. So it's great to be surrounded with a bunch of Latinos from around the state. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Raul Ortiz, welcome. If I could just have you on mute. If we could just unmute Raul. There you go.
Me? Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, I certainly want to start off by saying it is an honor, truly an honor, to finally put a name to the faces of all the people I read about in the paper, of the Latino accomplishments of everybody that's on this panel. It's amazing. I read about all of you, whether you know it or not. And I want to echo what Chief Casanova said. It's lonely, right? It gets a little lonely making these decisions, being in these positions of leadership, not to mention being Latino and being in the position of leadership. So congratulations to all of you. I'm honored. I have 21 years of fire service experience, with the last 3 years being the chief here in New Britain. So it truly is a humbling experience to be in this position, because I have the distinction of being the first Latino fire chief in the city. It's a 187-year history of this department and to have its first Latino fire chief, it's un orgullo, to be honest. But more importantly, it allows me to affect change, right? And to establish some hiring practices and to increase our influence to also have other Latinos join the fire service, police department, any public safety agency, or any agencies throughout the state for that matter. We have an opportunity and more so an obligation to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to land these great paying jobs. So, and with that, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, sir. And last but certainly not least, one of the most recent additions, at least in the centers of gravity that I've been honored to serve with you, we have the Commissioner, Angel Quiroz, from the Department of Corrections. Welcome, Angel.
Thank you. Very humble and blessed to be with such an elite group of individuals. And we talk about trailblazers, Representative Vargas, we have to recognize individuals like you that paved the way for us along the way in the struggles and remove barriers for us to have these opportunities. I started correction in 1989 at the age of 20, and I've risen through the ranks of the custody. And the last, I have 31 years in December with the Department of Correction. And it's just humbling for me, a kid that grew up in Hartford, a mile away from the capital, to think that I would be leading the largest state agency in the state agency with 6,000 employees, and then having an impact on the individuals that are returning back to the communities like Hartford, where I grew up, and the struggles that these individuals have because of poverty, because of substance abuse, mental health. Just to have an impact on these individuals is remarkable. And yes, Chief Casanova and Chief Ortiz, it is lonely. It is lonely at the top. It is even more lonelier being a Latino. And just like Mr. Ortiz, I will be if nominated, I will be the first Latino in the Department of Corrections Commissioner. It's a great honor. Very, very humbled by the opportunity. But as lonely as it is atop, we have a responsibility. We have an obligation to continue to remove barriers, whether it's by hiring process, mentoring, opportunities for more of people of color to be in these positions of leadership, so that when we're done and we leave, the next group is even going to go higher than what we've been able to accomplish. So thank you for this opportunity. Blessed to be with such an elite group.
Thank you so much. One of the things that's really striking, and thank you for mentioning the trailblazing, because it is no small feat. There are a few of us on the screen right now, but Representative Vargas and Hilda Nieves, the two of you have really been trailblazers in so many ways. And I bet there was a time when there were less and less and less Latinos. And remarkably, what I see on this screen is a lot of Puerto Ricanos. And so we have to honor the fact that Puerto Ricanos have been the trailblazers for the Latino community in Connecticut as well. So I'd like to talk with each of you a little bit about your sense, your feeling of mentorship, how mentorship and opportunities for kids in the Latino community. There's so many of them watching now on Facebook Live. What is the role of mentorship, not only in your life, but also in what you continue to do now? I'll start with you, Lesbia, but please feel free to chime in, everyone.
I think mentorship, I would say that my mentor, and I'll mention her, is in the military, was Major Acosta Newson. She was the first female that went through the officer candidate school in the Connecticut Guard. Still today, I call her my number one supporter, my number one cheerleader, and the person that I go to still today. For me, I have taken that as being the number one. It's about looking where you're heading, but also don't forget to look back and be able to pull those along the way. It's not a whole bunch of people, but it is being very selective about, I see the potential, like someone saw the potential in me and took the time to dedicate that inspiration, that motivation, those tips, I would call them, to say, no, take this way, do this, do that. This is the way you go to be able to continue your path to be able to succeed. So I'll never forget the words that she shared with me. She says, I made it to major. You're going to make it to lieutenant colonel. You got to go past me, per se. And then when I achieved the rank of colonel, because I was the first Latina lieutenant colonel in the Connecticut Guard. And now, of course, I'm still the first full-board colonel Latina in the Connecticut Guard. Of course, she was there as well. So it's really about being able to develop those relationships, but understanding what are the key goals and how are you be able to achieve those goals by having realistic objectives to support those goals along the way and being able to do that. I was a recruiter with the Connecticut Guard back in the 90s. So working in the Latino community was really important. And the military being just an option or being an opportunity. You can go to college, you can go to a trade school. This was just another opportunity. For me, it was education. That's why I joined when I was 18 years old. But being able to open up the doors of other possibilities, and especially in the Latino community. And I did that. Some of those recruits have retired from the military, and I'm still going because I believe that I can still make a difference and still be able to mentor and coach as well along the way. So,
yeah, Maggie, same for you. The importance of mentorship in your kind of being a mentor.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh, that's for Maggie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So yeah, I think mentorship is extremely important. I have been the pleasure, I don't have anyone specific, but I have been the pleasure of having a lot of people in my life. I've been in law enforcement 24 years, and as a female and Puerto Rican, that becomes a very lonely career. And one of the things for me that helps me grow is to mentor others. And I have been able to work in some programs through some very good friends, like my friend Christina Rosari, who works with Hartford and Wyndham kids in the CONCAP program to give the opportunities to do mentorship with the kids and kind of give them a different aspect. And me as a teenage mother, when I had my son when I was 17, it's really important to show the students and the kids that sometimes, you may not make the right choice or you might stumble a little, but then you get back up, you shake it off and you do your best. And I got that from my grandmother. My grandmother said, failing is not a bad thing. The bad thing is when you stay in the ground. So I won't say it the way she said it, but says you get your butt up and you do the right thing and you'll be fine. And, and if I didn't do that, la chancleta was coming behind me anyways. So keeping that close to my heart, making sure I reach out to the kids, making sure that I really work with students really helps me grow as a person. It helps me grow in my career and with my overall relationships. Stephen, you're muted.
I was, of course, the amateur move comes from the guy who's running the thing, right? Rob, I was talking to a pretty high-level elected official who happens to be Latino not too long ago, and he mentioned that one of his role models growing up in the community that he did was the community police officer. And then he said that what's so heartwarming for him is that now that his kids are in school, that same school is a resource officer in that school that continues to act as a role model. So I'll just frame the conversation that way for your impression about what the importance of role modeling is and of being a role model.
I could touch on that because my grandmother lived at the Mills here in Meriden, and we would always see the community policing officer, which was Hector Cardona, the senior, the officer in Meriden, who everyone knew in Meriden, would always go by the Mills, and he'd get coffee for my grandmother, and we'd all, as kids, run to the door and see him come, get his coffee, talk to the kids and stuff. So seeing that growing up just inspired me to become a police officer. I was blessed. I was around a lot of police officers when I was younger, a lot of firefighters. So I know Chief Ortiz will appreciate that. My uncle was a firefighter, so I was around civil service, and I did appreciate, and that was instilled in me. And basically, my family was telling me either be a police officer or be a firefighter. They're distinguished careers, and I followed that. I learned from a lot of police officers here, and I brought that to Willimantic. I believe in generalizing populations and helping the next generation grow. So they certainly paved the way for me, made it easier for me. And I kind of I used some of the same tactics that they used on me to try and mold young men and women to become police officers. I started coaching in Willimantic at an early age in my career. And two of the officers now in Willimantic, I actually coached as kids. So I feel like there's 3 generations that were touched by someone who was more senior than me and paved the way for myself. And that individual doesn't know it, but a lot of what he's instilled in me, I was able to share and use those same resources and skills to touch other people. So I'm actually proud of that. It's one of the things I always look back to in Willimantic, my days back there is, I always see these young officers who I knew as little kids grow up and want to become police officers. I had a little bit of influence on their lives, and now now they're police officers and they're almost eligible to be promoted. So I'm praying for them and hoping that they continue to do well over there in Willimantic and continue to lead the way. But yeah, so I could touch on that a little bit.
Thank you, Rob. I love that idea that kids are always watching, even when you think they aren't, and they are listening, even when you think they aren't. And they gravitate towards leadership and they gravitate towards guidance because it's a tough time, especially when you're in middle school or in high school, and but they're watching, they're listening, and you're a multi-generational example of that. So thank you for that. Lou, a public servant in a public space. I mean, there isn't more public a space and a civic space as the state capitol. These are peculiar times, right? But you are a public servant where kids see you, adults see you, and you're kind of leading the way in that way. You're a mentor to the other officers. So tell us about the importance of mentorship, not only to other generations, but also to the ranks of the people that you lead.
So mentorship is very important to me. You can't be what you can't see. Right. So as a chief, you have to lead by example every day because people are watching. Right. So you have to be on your game every day because, people are watching. So when I was a young fella, right, I grew up in their inner city. I grew up poor. Right. I always make a joke with this, but a field trip for me and my family was going to pick up the government cheese. It was a field trip for the family. We were poor. We had no money. We lived in public housing. And always wanted to be a cop, right? But never knew how to attain, how to do it, basically, right? And the ironic part was that I was actually visiting a family member who was incarcerated, right? I was a young fella, and there was a Latino that was a corrections officer, right? And he tells me, we're hiring, right? And that I had a chat with him. It resonated with me for a long time because I was still too young to apply, but I kept monitoring it, right? And I finally got the opportunity to be a corrections officer. And during my then I transitioned from there to the police department. And during my interview, the chief at the time asked me, what are some of the biggest voids in the Latino community? And it's mentorship. We although there's a group of us here, but there is such a massive void and there's such a lack of Latino representation. So we need to do a better job at that. Some of us have gotten there. Somebody mentioned earlier, we got to bring other people there. We have to get other people there. So as far as the Capitol, the Capitol is an extremely highly visible area. Got to be on your game every day. That's everyone's watching.
Isn't that interesting? Thank you for saying that, because so many of you have said that leadership is a lonely place and being a Latino leader is a lonely place. And it seems like everyone watching especially closely, right? When you're one of the few in the positions that we're in. So thank you for that, Lou. Raul, same question for you. When I was a little kid, firefighters were heroes. They were like Superman and Superwoman. So tell us a little bit about what it's like to mentor from your perspective. Let me just unmute you. There you go.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yep, perfectly.
Awesome. So to your question, it was difficult being a firefighter coming on when I first started. There weren't many Latinos, and I started in Hartford. So Hartford was the groundbreaker for a lot of transcending movements. They hired their first African-American chief, hired the first Latina woman in the Northeast back in 1982. They hired their first Latino fire chief back in 2011. So coming from that angle, once I saw that it was attainable, then I made that my goal. Once I saw that they looked like me, they reflected the community that I served, then I realized that I too can become a fire chief, right? And so I did make the jump over to New Britain to hold that distinction. That was important for me because to mentor somebody, you have to achieve a position where you can bring them up. So I truly believe that in order for it's not important that you are the first, though that is important. It's not enough, right? You got to make sure you're not the last. And so my job is to mentor the younger firefighters to then start achieving these ranks that we've all made it very possible to achieve. And so I'm very proud, and I'm gonna throw this plug out there. In the 187-year history of this department in New Britain, after this town hall meeting that we have, I will be starting our very first Fire Explorer program for kids 14 to 20-year-olds that can join the Fire Explorers and then become firefighters in the future. So it's important that we set these parameters for these younger kids to then follow. So again, hats off to everybody here that has been the first Latino of anything. You're trendsetters, you're trailblazers. And again, it's important that we mentor that next group of people to make sure that we're not the last. Right, we've achieved a certain position in our agencies, the pinnacle. Now we got to lend that hand out to make sure that other people follow us. And again, this goes to people that broke ground for us, right? The Maria Sanchez of the groups. Those people set the groundwork for us as well.
Thank you so much for that. You can't be there unless you see yourself there, someone said. And that's so true. And that rings so true, especially in professions where historically have not been populated by people who are different, people who are from other places. And, what's interesting about Connecticut is that it's gone through so many iterations of the promise of the American dream. And it seems like the current iteration is for Latinos. And so it's so exciting to see Latinos really not only create a foothold in the state as a state that is ours, but also of a possibility in a future that is ours as well. Angel, I've had the honor of working with a couple of your predecessors to your position. And one thing that's really remarkable to me about being the commissioner for the Department of Corrections is just the balance that you have in terms of having to balance the needs of the people that serve in the department, people who serve in the different institutions, the people who you are serving, and also the public. So how does mentorship and the experience of being a role model kind of work in your environment, Angel?
Well, that's a lot. Let's not forget the elected officials too. I got to balance them also. The advocacy groups, right? Mentorship is the key to everything. And I've been blessed. I can remember at the age of 20, working started at the Hartford County Jail. That at that time, probably the highest ranking Hispanic was at the rank of a captain and major. And when you work at one facility, that's what you see. So that's what I thought. I said, okay, one day I could be a captain. And this lieutenant took me to the side and said, kid, listen, stay focused, come to work. You're going to do good in this agency. And then after that, it was like I had a chip on my shoulder because that lieutenant helped me with my first step to lieutenant. But then every other rank, it was the white male. It was the white male that was in back. It was on my corner. and pushing me. And when I say a chip on my shoulder, meaning that at times I was frustrated. I was frustrated, why my own is not back in the corner. So there's some self-maturity that when you're a leader that you got to go through, and there's certain things that you have to change. And so to me now, as the commissioner, you got to be bold. You got to be bold if you want to make changes, if you want to make a difference. You got to make tough decisions. You cannot shy away from them, and you got to find the right people to mentor in your organization. But the Department of Correction, the beautiful part about the Department of Correction is that I have probably 250 lieutenants, another 130 captains, 32 deputy wardens, 14 wardens. When you look at our diversity in the rank and file, and the previous commissioner, Commissioner Cook, when I was his number 2, made it a point. He's like, Q, we're going to diversify this agency. So we started this movement of diversifying the rank and file. And we started at the top. When you look at my wardens now, since 2019, probably one of the most diversified group of individual, not just Latinos, African American, not just male, females, and there's still a whole bunch of room for improvement. But that provides that frontline officer, when he sees that every Tuesday we'll go into a facility. When he sees that executive team coming in, that the commissioner is Hispanic, that my 2 district administrators that oversee the wardens, one is a Black female and the second one is a Hispanic male. My PO, my public information officer is a female. So when they see that, there's hope. And the most important thing about mentorship too is that sometimes when we try to mentor that perfect person. Listen, people are going to make mistakes. People are going to fall. It's just how you fall and how you get back up, And it speaks volume. And I always tell the people that I mentor, you make the mistake once, I'm good. You make the same mistake twice, it's not a mistake, it was a choice. So now we got to work on your choices. But you can't give up on them. You cannot give up on the individual. Sometimes it's time consuming, but as a leader, you have to find that time. You have to schedule that time to go into the facility, to talk to the frontline staff, and to make an everlasting impact. So it's you know what, and being at the top, your subordinates will feed off of you. So when they know that and when I say I'm bold about it, meaning I'm very professional about it, but I'm very transparent that there's room for to continue to diversify, in particular in the Department of Correction with the female supervisors.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Angel. One thing that strikes me about each of your responses and each of your approach is humility. And, I don't know whether this is a cultural thing. We're here entre Latinos, entre familias, so I'll say it this way. There are different types of humility. There's humility as a condition, it's humility that kind of weighs on you, but there's humility as a skill and humility as a gift. And what I find that humility to be like, it's the humility to know when you've made a mistake, when you look up to others, that there is a higher power, a higher calling, and a higher order that you look to. And that type of humility is really powerful because it's the type of humility that makes us better leaders and also better, more connected. So thank you for the way each of you exhibits this powerful humility that is unique, I think, to leadership. These are tough times for all of your professions as first responders, first providers, really, really tough times, whether it be the social issues at hand, whether it be all of the dynamics of everything that you have to face every day. When a young person or a person who's thinking of entering your professions is looking toward you and maybe asking the question, Lesbia, why should I be in this profession? There's wars going on and it's tough. And, what would you say to someone who asks you, why is this important to you? And why should it be important to me?
Well, I think my response would be, where are you heading? What would you like to achieve? Defining that path. What's the journey that you want to take? And what's your vision of being able to get there? Because you have options. You know, we can do the pitch of being able to serve your country, defend your country, internally or externally. We call it CONUS or OCONUS per se, looking at the benefits and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what is it that you're looking to achieve? And sometimes they don't really know. And you sit down and you open that scope of opportunities. If it is, I really want to travel the world. Okay, you could possibly travel the world, but also keep in mind that you might end up in a place that it might be a world that you don't want to be at per se. Anyways, and it's going to be an experience. My wife, did I ever imagine that I'd be, in Iraq for a year? But I was, and it was in the middle of a combat zone per se. But it's really expanding the scope of opportunities and being able to be honest about what are going to be the challenges, los retos, what are going to be the actual benefits of it all, and really laying it out and saying, this is the opportunities. These are the dangers that you might present and then you might have to combat with, and just being very transparent about that. I think there's nothing more important to me, just being able to tell what the truth is per se. Because no, it's not easy leaving my kids. Like I've had to leave them quite a few times being a mom. Not easy being able to come back and reintegrate back into a community that didn't understand what is it for a woman to have gone to combat and come back per se. So just being very transparent and honest about what it could be, but also say, hey, these are the possibilities, and help them and assist them in making that choice. And are they qualified? I mean, it becomes another issue because there's criteria for all our professions here per se. Are you qualified? And if you're not, and you really want to do this, how can we get you to be qualified? I mean, that becomes an underlying question as well. So, yeah. Thank you
so much, Lesbia. Maggie, same question for you. When you are in an environment with a lot of young people who, as Lesbia said, may not have decided the career path that they want, and here they see a role model, a mentor, they wonder, could I do that? Is this something I really want to do? How do you express the importance of your profession to somebody who may be young and thinking, is this something I want to do?
So, nowadays law enforcement, is under fire. And is actually, some of it is what the evil and stuff we created by certain actions, but we are under fire. And what I do is sometimes share my own story. I didn't grow up wanting to be a police officer. I actually did not like police officers. I grew up when I came here to this country. I was 17 and I lived in a inner city neighborhood. Had a kid, my little baby boy is 32 years old right now. I had bad encounters with police and they were negative. And I just didn't want to be, I hated cops and I was very vocal about it. And I went to school to actually become an attorney to deal with bad cops. And then I got a job offer, and my one of my mentor at the time said, well, you know what? I said, if you want to change something, you don't change things by complaining. You don't change things by criticizing or pointing. You change things by joining and making a change and becoming part of the change. So I became a police officer and I still was adamant I wasn't going to like it. But I also learned that there's another side to every story, that you need to become part of that change. And I tell them, I said, why do you want to be a police officer? What are your reasons behind this? And if it's because you want to improve our law enforcement community and you want to make us better, then absolutely you have me to, as a mentor, you have me 100% behind you.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. Rob, we're talking a lot about now, especially in the spaces of public interest and of public policy, about recruiting and the importance of recruiting in a particular way. When you look at your potential recruits, maybe some of the kids that you're coaching or that your kids are coaching, how do you express your vision so that they can see the vision for being among your ranks as a police officer?
So certainly it's not just words, it's also by your actions. So I think you have to hold yourself to a high standard and let them see what you want them to be. So it's not just talking about what you want them to be, but it's just showing them through your actions and holding yourself accountable and at a high level to explain to them that this is who you should be growing up. I agree with everyone here on this board is saying, talking about change. Change is the most important thing to any profession. And if you want to go into a profession when it's easy, that's just the easy way out. I think it's more important to join a profession like we're under fire right now and to make changes. If you want to be a part of something, the most important time to join a profession is during that change. I told officers today, I said, I'm coming in new to this agency, and I want to mold this agency. I want to recruit, retain a lot of good staff. And it's not just minority staff, it's all staff. All staff has to understand diversity. But I have a vision for this department, and it's not just my fingerprint on this department. I tell all the officers and my supervisors here at the police department is we're going to shape and mold this department using all our fingerprints. We're going to have all our fingerprints on this agency to make it successful. And you just have to lead by example. And it's not just words, it's actions.
Thank you, Rob. Raul, same question to you. You know, as I said, growing up, there were, when in the family that I did, you know, you looked up to your role models, and your role models were your local police officer, your role models were the fighters and the first responders. And so tell me, in today's world where everything's about technology and about, figuring out computers and all this stuff, you attract young people to the profession of saving lives and being a hero as a firefighter?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question, because no matter how much IT we have in our society, nothing will ever replace putting boots on the ground, right? Putting firefighters inside buildings to effect rescues. And in today's society, our kids are a little more savvy with the IT portion of it, right? And so it's important that we attract those people as well. There's a whole segment of the fire service that is all analytics, right? It really comes down to data mining, being able to support some of the resources that we're asking for through data. And so that could attract our IT a population or a group of kids that are interested. Not everyone wants to be a firefighter. Now, that's also been an issue with recruiting female women into the fire service, female firefighters, because not all of them are looking to get into it. But you have to expose them into the different divisions within the fire service. It's not just fighting fires, investigations, it's inspections, it's training, it's the analytics, so there's so many different avenues that people can take within the fire service. So you have to attract that crowd, or you're going to be left behind, right? We're one of the few entities that the less fires we have, the less you need the firefighters. So we're actually pretty good at putting ourselves out of business. With more public education comes less fires. So, and there's also that avenue, right? Interacting with kids, promoting fire prevention. There's a whole avenue of fire prevention that we can entice our kids to join. So it's important that you introduce them into the fire service and the different options that they have within the fire service, not just fighting fires. Many people have come up the ranks through the different avenues and not necessarily just fighting fires to become fire chief. I certainly don't fight fires anymore, but I'm also responsible for the people that I'm putting in that position. So it's important that we introduce all of our kids to the different avenues so that they have options, right? Give them that confidence to apply, give them the confidence to dive into those different avenues so that they can essentially become to the rank that you've achieved, if I'm explaining that properly.
That's great, Raul. Thank you for that. You know, Vargas, I'm not going to let you off the hook, because Raul just reminded me that so much about public service isn't just about leading, but it's also about resources and finding resources, marshaling them, getting them to where they need to be. And in your public service, I know that is one of your main concerns, is figuring out how to resource a lot of the first responders and first providers that you see here. So tell us a little bit about that, about public service resources and your trajectory as a leader in these spaces.
Well, there's so much to say about this, Stephen. My relationship with people in uniformed services goes deep. My brother was a police officer. My father, my grandfather were both military. My two sons are correction officers in the state of Massachusetts, and I have a deep admiration for people who are first responders, and I'm very proud of our people and the headway they've made. And when Chief Ortiz was talking about, Hartford being a trailblazer in this, it brought back so many memories to me, because the reason we were able to integrate the fire department was because a young child died as a result of the language and cultural barriers that existed in the city of Hartford. We had a young boy by the name of Julio Lozada, who was buried under an old garage that collapsed over him. And even though the neighbors were trying to explain in Spanish to the firefighters who didn't speak Spanish, only spoke English, that there was a child trapped there, they couldn't understand. They left the scene, and 2 times they came back to the scene, and the same problem happened. Finally, when they did rescue the child and got him over to the hospital, the doctor said, if he had come just a few minutes earlier, we might have been able to save his life. And as a result of that tragedy, people that have been mentioned here, like Maria Sanchez, Esther Jimenez, people like Olga Mealy, this was a group of women, dynamic women that really were mobilizing the Hartford community at that time. People like Carmen Rodriguez, people like Mildred Torres. This was a group of dynamic women. And I remember that Eugenio Caro, who's still around, Jose La Luz, myself, and others, we mobilized hundreds of people to go to City Hall and demand from our city elected officials that they integrate the fire department. And that's how slowly, first, the point was made that it's not only firefighters, but there's other positions within the department. We started first actually with dispatchers by integrating that service. And in the earlier subject you talked on, Stephen, which was the whole issue of mentoring, my wife Sylvia and I are both retired Hartford Public School teachers, 35 years each in the Hartford Public Schools. So by nature, we like to mentor young people. And now at the legislature, I've had the opportunity to have interns come in to learn the process, learn what to do. And in your question, about the resources, and we have diminishing resources. Now with this COVID-19, we have even less resources. We had to raid our rainy day fund and utilize it to balance the budget. It becomes more critical that we try to squeeze every penny, that we try to be smart about how we make our investments. And those of us that have been around the block for a long time, like Hilda and myself, and Werner now, Werner's become a veteran here in Connecticut. He reminded me how we were fighting against English only back in the 80s. We had public hearings late at night, and he was there and I was there. And now we see that we're in a different position, though, because now we're in a position where we can make changes, we can control those budgets, we can have a say on how those monies are expended. And very important that we develop that youth, because especially in the case of people like me who've been around for a long time, we know that our time is limited, and we're not going to be around forever. So we've got to make sure that we use those resources to train, to promote, to encourage, to lead. And I think from what I've heard of the whole group here, in response to your question, Stephen, is that everybody seems to be on the same page.
It's powerful. Hilda, one of the things about the judicial system, and you being a trailblazer in the judicial system, that's so clear to me is that it's often the quietest and the most resistant to change, let's just put it that way, branch of the 3 branches of government.
You couldn't say that better.
So tell us a little bit about your experience, Hilda.
Wow. I remember Edwin from back in the day, and I've read in the paper about his advocacy and his career and his journeys. I identify with an awful lot of the folks on the panel. Certainly my background was criminal justice. I worked for judicial for 33 years. And I heard the commentaries made about the fact that it's lonely in leadership. Talk about lonely. I was the first Latina promoted within judicial ever to have risen to the ranks of administrative capacity. I overseen 145 people in an administrative capacity. It was very challenging working in a probation field in a time when it was nothing but male-dominated, Caucasian male-dominated positions. It was very unusual. It was a rarity to see a woman in a law enforcement probation officer position. And then having been the only Latina officer ever hired into the department, and then as time went on, to have been promoted into positions like assistant chief to chief of an office, the biggest office in the state of Connecticut, which was Hartford, to then transfer over to the Manchester probation officer, to then move on to an administrator's capacity and have worked with Bill Carbone and 9 males. It was challenging, and to exert yourself as a Latina and as a female and as a minority, and someone who, for me, having grown up in Hartford, always had that sense of wanting to give back, that sense of compassion, that connection, because that's who I was. I was Puerto Rican. I grew up in Hartford. My parents weren't rich. My father worked 3 jobs and my mother worked a job. And I am one of 8, educated myself against all odds, and was actually the first one in my family to go on to secure a college degree and get to the heights that I did within in my time. But the challenges that were faced within the judicial branch, there was a lot of controversy, and just this feeling of wanting to give back and to make a difference, and to know that no one gave me a hand, trying to look back and say, I'm going to guide you, I'm going to direct you. That was something that stayed with me from the day I left my position as an officer, and always throughout my career with judicial, with CSSD, I always said I will never treat anyone the way I was treated, and always made it a point to mentor not just volunteers and interns, but made it a point to pull folks to the side and talk to them about the do's and don'ts about working in a state of Connecticut position and working in judicial, where you're talking about law, you're talking about putting your best foot forward, being professional despite the challenges and despite the commentaries and despite the obstacles. And, I took it, but I thought it was so important to always give direction to folks who weren't given that opportunity. And I said to myself, I want to reach a height where I can sit at that table and help make those decisions and ask those questions and make a difference. And when I finally got to that position, it was helpful as a chief of 2 offices, but it was even more helpful, but just as much of a challenge, sitting at a table with 9 male counterparts in an administrative capacity, running the state of Connecticut probation office, and bringing up issues like culture, bringing up issues about language barriers, bringing up the issue about the importance of making sure that the clientele that we were serving, not just the public in terms of the courts, but those that came into the office to be served and to be seen as clients, and for us to want to make a difference in their lives, I thought it was important to make sure that they understood what they were reading, to make sure that they understood, had an officer to explain things in a language that they understood, and not just Spanish, because for me, it was about anyone who didn't understand the language. And it's not just about understanding the language, but being proficient. Sometimes people think, because you ask a person, what's your name and what's your address, that's sufficient. That's not sufficient. Diversity, culture, all those kinds of things count. And when we talk about feeling lonely at the top, learning how to navigate and knowing who your friends are, who to tap into, who can I direct the question to, a person that I can have some kind of confidence in. Those were all the things that, one learns as you travel through that journey and to reach that goal of wanting not just to make a difference for yourself and wanting to get to the top and wanting to make good money and just having a position of authority and clout. But I think to know that you've made a difference in the lives of the people that you serve, and to be able to say, geez, I made a difference, and what I've said counts. Let's diversify. Let me make sure that folks are looking at resumes that bring in diversity into a department, into an office. But I think in my time, and I continue to be an advocate and to be advocate for those in need, from people with domestic violence situations to sexual assault victims, and even giving back to and working with kids that are in lieu of being taken into foster care. So you have to continue to give back. But one thing, as I traveled through my journey and the different capacities that I've held in my time, I think one of the things that just really drove it home one day for me, I heard what some of the folks on this panel said about feeling lonely, but there's a gratitude that comes with when you've reached a point in a position where you can make a difference. And I'm sitting in the office one day in Manchester, and I had thought to myself, what did I do leaving Hartford, biggest office in the state of Connecticut, as the chief person that ran that office? I knew the place like the back of my hand. Inner city, that was me. And I decided, I want to get the same pay. Let me transfer to a smaller office and make the same amount of money. One day, a week after I had transferred in, I'm thinking, what am I doing here? And I get a call, and I will remember this day to the day I die. And the phone rings, it's 4:05 on a Friday afternoon. All of my officers were out in the field doing field visits on a Friday. And the support staff transferred the call to me. Well, I had always said, if a client comes in and they don't understand the language, an officer isn't available, let me know. I had no fear, no qualms about rolling up my sleeves and doing the same work that I started doing, which was that of an officer. And I took the call that was transmitted to me, and the person, one of the things that I had done when I started at that office, I changed the phone system, making sure that it was in 2 languages, English and Spanish, because I could see that there was a big population of minorities that came in from East Hartford. So I get this call, and the person speaking to me in Spanish, and I'm really rather curious, and I listened to the individual, and he's speaking in Spanish, and I'm thinking to myself, how did he know that this individual that picked up the phone line spoke another language? So I answered his question, and before concluding my call with him, I asked him, out of curiosity, sir, in Spanish, mind you, how did you end up reaching me and asking for me? He said, I listened to the voicemail message, and I heard that it was in 2 languages, and I listened to the Spanish voicemail messages, and I listened, and I seen that there was one Latino name on that roster, Nieves. And so he said, and I will never forget the gentleman's words. He said, ya basta. And that just made my day. To think that something so small and what someone may think is so insignificant, to have changed a voicemail system so that it gave the calling public the ability to listen to a message in a language they understood. And from there, I took it forward. I just continued to battle for and to advocate for diversity, for a team. We may not agree. We may see things differently, but diversity and differences, young and old, Latino, Black, Asian, that is what comprises our society. And I always lived by that motto. And I said to myself, and have always said, continue to advocate and make a difference for people who may not know any better, who may need a little bit of guidance and may need some mentorship. And that's what I continue to do today.
Hilda, that's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. There's so much resonance in your trajectory with so many of the people that are listening, I bet. And that moment that you describe where that one person had a lifeline to a vital service or to a vital way of being understood.
Yes.
It's so critically important. So thank you for that, Hilda. Angel, oftentimes in the business that you're in, and I have a cousin who's in correction in the state of California, it's a tough job. And it's a tough job because so many of the people that you're serving are in probably the worst times of their lives. Mm-hmm. So, for me, it seems that it's so important that there be a spirit of public service in everybody who works in that environment. How do you recruit public servants to the space of correction and also encourage it among the ranks?
It's so important with everything that's going on in today's world with the social injustice. My recruitment and has changed, meaning that if you want to be part of the leadership team in correction, you got to be on board with criminal justice reform. When you look at Connecticut, the DOC budget is bigger than the education budget. To me, it should be the other way around. It should be the other way around, where we're investing with structured programs from pre-K to elementary and high school to divert these individuals from ending up in our system. So that's number one. You got to really understand that we're going to enter the period of criminal justice reform. The days of locking them up and throwing the keys away, it's gone. It is gone. I need officers and supervisors that are going to be able to engage with the population. Human dignity, because and I've been asked the questions before. What's different from you and previous commissioner? Well, one thing that sticks in my mind is that I've had family members that have done time in the same system now that I'm overseeing, and some of them just came once and got the message. But I've had other family members that, because of substance abuse, because of mental health abuse, ended up incarcerated, a revolving door, and end up dying in prison. So you got to have that human dignity to understand that these individuals, the majority, and I think what the citizens don't understand, that 93% of the individuals that are incarcerated in 7.5 years are going. That's the average sentence in Connecticut. 7.5 years will be in our communities. Will be at the mall. Will be at church service. Will be at the convenience store with you. So we have to, in corrections, our mindset, it has to change. The culture has to change, where we're more engaged with the population, providing them the skill sets, meaningful skill sets, and particularly manufacturing. When you look at the Department of Labor openings, big job openings in manufacturing. If you can get an individual with a skill set in manufacturing, and we were, before COVID, we were heading that direction with us Nuntuck, and I had 8 individuals working in Whitcraft and Oxford. These individuals, when they were discharging from correction, were leaving with a $50,000 paying job salary. So to me, the mindset, it has to change. That we're here to help these individuals. That I don't want that officer being recruited that think that he or she is going to be the judge. Because the judge is the only individuals that hands out the punishment. Our job is to mentor these individuals, provide some of them with role models, provide them with the skill sets, and then you got the other 3. You got the other 7%. The other 7% that heinous crimes that will not be out in society, and those are the individuals that are involved in assaulting my officer and so forth, and that's a different population that are more difficult to manage. But 93% of this population is going to be out in our community. It is my job as a commissioner to make sure that I provide my officers with the training and then the offenders with the skill set to be successful. Are they all going to be successful? They're not going to be successful. And let me tell you this, and for the families that are watching too, in order for an offender, and I've had front row seat to this in my own family, in order for individuals incarcerated to change, okay, there's got to be 4 things. All right, there's got to be the commitment from the individual to want to change. All right, no matter what struggle he or she goes through, how many times they fall, they got to have the commitment to change. That commitment that if their job is to clean the floor because of the maintenance to start there, they got to have that commitment. Then it's got to be the family support. The family's got to be there to support the individual, and with the understanding that these are individuals, that they're going to make mistakes, and you as a family member got to be there to pick them back up. Then there's got to be a home, a place for the individual to go, and there's got to be employment. I mean, that's the only way. That's the mindset that I want my officers, my supervisors to think. You know that because and I've been very transparent with them that Representative Vargas mentioned the struggle with the budgets. Come budget 21, 22, and 22, 23, there will be facility closures. There will be facility closures. And I'm hoping that we can reallocate some of those funds from the saving into meaningful programming skill sets for these individuals. So I'm, the days of that big CO, 6'2", athletic, those days are over. Those days are over. The best skill set you can have now is your IPC skills, talking to these individuals like they're human beings, and with the understanding, knowing that 93% of them will be back out in the community. Is it going to be difficult? It's going to be difficult because we got to change the mindset or culture that we when I say we, and to the citizen of the state of Connecticut, the elected official in the 1990s when we had all these gang issues and riots, we locked them up, warehouse them, throw away the keys. They're not coming back out. Not realizing in 2003 we started seeing a shift that these individuals coming back on into society. And now, correction, you didn't correct them. And that's when in 2003, that's when the money started coming in. The funds started coming in for reentry to give them a skill set. And to be honest, that skill set is needed. And if we can save money in correction our budget and send it back into those communities, to Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, those inner city with poverty, and provide structured programs to those youth. I mean, it's going to be a big change. It's going to be a big change. Not that Department of Correction will never be out of business because there's always crime, but there's still a lot of improvement we can do to keep moving that count down so that our budget's smaller.
Thank you for lifting up prevention, first of all, and not giving up on kids. And thank you for also lifting up empowerment and human dignity, because that is so critical. And it's no surprise to me that you touched on the hallmarks of human dignity, which is family and community support, which is having a house over your head and having a way to be productive and to give back. And that type of human dignity is so powerful. It's enduring. And it's funny because you mentioned it in the context of correction and in reintegration, but I think that really it resonates for all of us in terms of the human dignity that with which we operate on our daily lives. So thank you for that, Angel. Lou, as we come upon the hour, I just wanted to give you an opportunity. You've worn many hats in your leadership. And here you are now. You're a role model for the Capitol. At the Capitol, you're a role model not only for your fellow officers, but also for kids out there who are thinking, "Is this something that I want to do? Is this something that I want to pursue? Why would I want to do this now?" Right? What would you say to a young person who is thinking that law enforcement, in particular your brand of law enforcement, is an option?
Law enforcement, in my opinion, and even with today's struggles, is the greatest profession in America. The satisfaction that you get when you can change the trajectory of someone's life, right? It's like nothing else, right? And what I'm talking about is getting people on the right track. We want to put corrections out of business, right? That should be our goal as law enforcement officers, right? I'll give you a little bit of out of the 2.3 million Americans that we have in prison today, right? 57% of them are in there for drug addiction and mental health issues, right? We're using the prison system as a surrogate, right, for drug addiction and mental health, right? That's, the cops, the police officers on the street, we have to stop feeding that conveyor belt. So we have to start hiring a different individual who's less about the adventure and more about the service, right? We're a service profession, right? And you got to believe in the God of second chances, right? When you give people an opportunity and they correct their life, right? Or you put them on the right track, or you have anything to do with that, the duration of satisfaction lasts your entire career. So if you want to be part of changing policing in America, I challenge you to join policing today, because we need all the help we can get.
Ooh, thank you, sir. The power of being entre familia, right? And the power of having you as leaders in these critical spaces right now, the spaces of public service and first response. The power of having you there is that when you look at your jobs and the things that you do every day, you come to your job with the compassion, with the empathy of familia and of community. And that is so critically important. And that is why our professions and your professions need to diversify. That is why your leadership in these professions are so critically important. And it's been a real honor to be here with each of you today, and just to have you share a little bit about who you are, and also and to the benefit not only of the public that is viewing, but to the betterment and the perfection of the public service that you engage. So thank each and every one of you for being with us. And I'm really excited to go back into the spaces where we're used to working together and continuing the good work together. So have a great night, everybody. And thank you for your service.
Thank you. Have a good night.